one for the 92nd General Assembly, and today legislators were sworn in and were assigned to committees. But what is next for this session? What can we expect? Caleb Talley joins us from Arkansas Money and Politics, talking about some of the big issues we can expect. But first, let's talk about day one. It's essentially the first day of school for legislators. Yes. They're sworn in. They all see each other kind of after the Christmas break. What was it like? What was the atmosphere there today?
Well, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. The people that were working hard were stressed out, but the ones who who are returning to the session were greeting everybody that they hadn't seen in a while. So it was exciting to see everybody on the Hill.
And it is day one. You will be there every day covering this session. We want to talk about some of the big items, starting with highway funding. That is a big one that we'll keep our eye on this session.
So that's going to be a big ticket issue. It's not exactly the most exciting thing to report on, coming from someone who's reported on it, but that's really going to be our biggest ticket issue. There are estimates that say Arkansas needs approximately $500 million in additional funding annually just for maintenance and upkeep of our current highway system. And as of the last legislative session, we failed to pass anything that would address that. There was a bill that was attempted that would put a bond measure on our ballot that would have raised approximately $200 million annually. That failed. There was another measure, another bill that was filed last legislative session that would have raised the gas tax. That failed. I think what will ultimately come down to is lawmakers will probably push this issue to the voters because they don't want to have ownership of anything that actually, any actual bill, they'll give it to the voters to decide.
After all of that back and forth, we may find ourselves looking at that issue. Education is something, a big topic that will be discussed. Teacher raises, one part of the education. Kind of talk about what we can expect there.
Actually, that bill was filed today by Representative Cozart. Bill was filed to really to follow through with what the governor promised during his re-election bid last year. He promised to raise teacher salaries. That bill was filed today. That would raise starting salaries for teachers approximately 3.5% to 4.5% based on years of experience. So that will address teacher salary. There's also some, we can probably expect some bills regarding school choice. There was last legislative session, and that never really, those didn't pass last legislative session, so we can expect those this year. There's also been bills filed addressing anti-bullying measures. There was a bill filed to address considering out-of-state experience for when hiring teachers, and also to require journalism to be taught in high schools.
That's something very interesting. Yes, exactly. We all have our eye on that one as well. I want to touch on also, we've talked about highway funding, talked about education. Online sales tax is something that affects a lot of people. I mean, look at how much money was spent online for Christmas alone this year. What do you expect to see here with that being discussed at the Capitol?
Well, we saw this debated last legislative session, but I believe that this legislative session will actually see some action on it. There's actually an old law on the books that requires consumers to send in their sales and use tax when they purchase an item from out of state. I've heard it referred to as the Sears Roebuck law. If you purchase something from the catalog out of state, you're supposed to write a check to the state and send in your sales and use tax. Well, people, when they buy something from Amazon, they're not writing that check. So this law would essentially put that responsibility from the consumer on the seller. And it was actually the first bill filed during the pre-filing period.
Very interesting. It's going to be an interesting session. Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back to talk more about it as everything gets underway. Again, Caleb Talley, you can read all of his articles online, Arkansas Money and Politics. And now here's a check of your forecast.